morning. Welcome to our first video about Dante and his Divine Comedy. I think it's kind of appropriate that we start our study of Dante in the Easter season, because that's when our poem begins to take place. At least the Inferno section as we begins on Good Friday. So what we're going to do, I'm going to do a series of these. These are what I would, or as the Italians call it, a lectio brevis, which is a short or brief lecture. I'll try to do these outdoors as much as I can, just because, it gets us outside. You're going to hear some noise in the background, sirens, maybe birds singing, occasionally the wind blowing that might interfere with the mic. But I'll try to keep these probably within about 5 minutes, and we'll do a whole series of these in lieu of not being able to sit together and talk about it. So I think in this first one, what I want to talk with you guys about is why Dante. Why am I picking this particular work to end our year? It sounds a little ominous, kind of taking this trip through hell with a poet from the 1200s. But I think as we start to see this poem maybe in a new light, one of the things you'll realize is that Dante has a lot to offer us today. And I think he's an important read on more than one level. This work in particular is what I would consider to be the cornerstone of Western literature. Shakespeare has his entire corpus to study, but there's not one particular play. I wouldn't put it on Hamlet, I wouldn't put it on Lear, but I would put my money on a work like the Divine Comedy, or a work like Herman Melville's Moby Dick, which I think is equal to the task of informing us. So where do we start with Dante? Well, one of the things I want to talk about is in this little brief lecture, we'll talk really about 3 or 4 reasons why Dante is important for us to study. And the first one is that Dante is us. He is a man in his middle age, not that we're middle-aged, but he's a man who's facing a crisis in his life, just as we are going to face crises in our own lives. And he doesn't know what to do. He's stuck. Everything that used to make sense to him isn't really working for him. So if you've ever gotten to a point, or I imagine you will at some point get to a point where you begin to question everything that you used to rely on doesn't seem to be working. Everything that you had faith in seems to become now questionable to you. So what does it mean when you face failure? In Dante's case, he thinks of failure as this idea of sin, but he's not looking at it necessarily in religious terms. And that's one key to this book. It is not a religious text, even though you'll see a lot of references and allusions, and you'll see tons of stuff made about how this is biblical. Dante makes no mistake. He is not writing a text that's meant to be a substitute for Catholicism or whatever religion you want to plug in. Dante sees sin as a failure, and it's a failure of love. Everywhere you go, as you read through, if you read through the Inferno, Paradiso, Purgatorio, you would see that on every level, love is somehow integrated into everybody's position, like where they wind up in the afterlife. And those who succeed at love wind up in paradise. Those who fail at love wind up in hell. And then the rest wind up somewhere in between in Purgatorio. So Dante, I think, for this reason, he is like us, who are facing some kind of struggle or question about what's going to work, how is it going to work, how do I answer the question of getting through this difficult point in my life. And being surrounded in this COVID-19 virus with a lot of unanswered questions about the future, it's a very important question to ask ourselves. Dante, on a second level, also shows us that it is possible to escape from hell. So no matter how bad your situation might be, no matter how prevalent your exile might be, you can find a way out, just as Dante does. It's not an easy path, but there's not a directionless path. So Dante shows us that in order to escape hell, we have to sometimes rearrange the way we view the world. That old vision, those old dependencies that we had on things that we thought would work, those things that we thought would give us substance, those things that we thought would give us guidance, sometimes those aren't quite right. So no matter how bad your situation might be, no matter how prevalent your exile might be, you can find a way out, just as Dante does. It's not an easy path, but there's not a directionless path. So Dante shows us that in order to escape hell, we have to sometimes rearrange the way we view the world. That old vision, those old dependencies that we had on things that we thought would work, those things that we thought would give us sustenance, those things that we thought would give us guidance, sometimes those aren't quite right. The third things that you can look at is Dante deals with, and this is all kind of related, that period of time that often we find ourselves in, sometimes referred to as the dark night of the soul. And the dark night of the soul is not just a religious idea. It's kind of the idea that there's a point that we all will reach in our lives, and it may come sooner than it for us, or it may come later, or it may come at several points where we feel like we are at the bottom. We have no guide. We have no way or no knowledge of how to get out of the situation that we're in. And I think the Inferno, Purgatorio, Paradise, all combined in this great work that we're going to call the Divine Comedy, gives us answers to that. He helps us understand what it means to feel like an exile, to be an exile. And as I give a second talk, I'll talk a little bit about Dante's history. And one of the things you'll notice with Dante is that he spent the better part of his adult life exiled from his home country, cut off from his finances, cut off from his family, cut off really from his identity. And that's what it meant to be an exile for him, to lose your sense of identity. And so Dante helps us understand what that's like and how we can navigate our way through that. All right. And then finally, Dante helps provide us kind of a roadmap, or maybe a better way of looking at that is he gives us an encyclopedia. He gives us a tool that's filled with different pieces of knowledge of how to work our way out or navigate our way through those difficult times in our lives. So I think you'll enjoy this reading. It's a little different. We're going to start things differently. Obviously, if we were in the classroom, we would have more tools at our exposure to work with. I'd be able to kind of visit with each of you and talk you through this, but instead we'll utilize these kind of brief lectures as we go through there. All right, that's lecture number 1. More will be coming forth this week and next. So I wish you a good day. The birds are singing. It's a beautiful day.